I'm Parneet Jaggi, and we will be talking about the detailed analysis of the story of the revenge play, The Duchess of Malfi, written by the Elizabethan dramatist John Webster. Now, we know the play is one of the greatest tragic plays, the greatest tragedies of the Elizabethan age, apart from Shakespeare's play, and it is also regarded as Webster's greatest work, and he probably wrote it around 1614 when it was staged and was first performed by the prestigious King's Men acting troupe at the Blackfriars Theatre. So we've already seen in detail what characters the play has and what kind of a role do they play in the drama. Now, the background and the location of the play is Italy, and mostly the events are taking place at the Duchess's palace in Malfi in the 16th century. And we know the Duchess as a young widow whose brothers, Ferdinand and Cardinal, are visiting her from Rome and in the beginning of the play. And Antonio, who is the manager of her household, has just returned from France. Now, it is Roman Catholic Italy, which English audiences at that time when the play was written would have associated with corruption. And this Duchess, who was a young widow, who got widowed at a very, very young age in her prime youth, and she's the ruler of the Italian town of Amalfi. And she has a steward whose name is Antonio, who has just returned from a visit to the French court. And we have Bassola, a murderer and a former employee of her brother. Brothers are Cardinal and Ferdinand. So this is the introduction of the play. Now, before leaving the Duchess, Ferdinand engages Bassola. Now, Bassola is going to act as a spy who was previously used by the Cardinal as a hitman to ostensibly manage the Duchess's horses, but in reality to spy on her for the brothers so that they can be sure she remains chaste, pure, and does not remarry. Now, Bassola is reluctant, but eventually he agrees. So, before they return to Rome, Ferdinand and the Cardinal lecture the Duchess about the impropriety of remarriage. Now, they are the ones who do not want her to marry. She's young, she's beautiful, she's intelligent, she's noble, but still they want her to remain single, they want her to remain alone and loyal to them. However, she insists that she has no plans for remarriage and shows some irritation at their attempts to control her. However, as soon as they leave, she sets in motion a plan to propose to Antonio with the help of her maid, Cariola. Now, Antonio is actually a steward in her court, in her palace, but she is in love with him. So they both of them marry. Antonio and the Duchess marry, and the Duchess reassures Antonio that they will find a way to appease and convince her brothers. Now, when we look at Act 2, it is about 9 months later when the Duchess is pregnant with Antonio's child, and Bassola, suspecting her condition, creates a plan to prove it to himself by giving her apricots to induce pain. So, the Duchess eats these apricots. She accepts them, and immediately she becomes ill. She goes into labor, and there is a lot of chaos in her palace. There is a rushing off to her bedroom, and Antonio and Delio, both friends now, discuss how to keep her condition secret. So, to try to maintain the secret, Antonio and the Duchess give out a story that the Duchess has fallen ill with some disease. Antonio confronts Bassola to ask if the apricots were poisoned. Bassola denies the accusation, but after the confrontation, after meeting him, he notices that Antonio had accidentally dropped a piece of paper. Now, this paper was actually the horoscope of the baby who was born, which provides Bassola with concrete evidence that the Duchess has had a child. Now he decides to send the paper in a letter to the Duchess's brother in Rome. And when Ferdinand and the Cardinal learn that the Duchess has disobeyed them, they are angry, they are infuriated, thinking that their noble blood has been tainted, it has been spoiled. Now, they actually cannot bear the idea of Duchess having any kinds of relationships with anybody else. But yet they decide to wait to find out who actually the father is before they take any action on the Duchess. So these brothers are both shocked, incensed, but the Cardinal maintains a cool calm, while Ferdinand, because he's very short-tempered, grows erratically angry. Now, Act 3 begins about 2 years later, with Delio's return to the Duchess's palace. Antonio and Duchess have had 2 more children in the meantime. Now, this is a very strange twist which is happening. So, when Duchess has 2 more children with Antonio, now Ferdinand, who actually learned about the children from Bassola, decides to confront the Duchess in her room, in her chamber. Ferdinand sneaks in and frightens the Duchess, giving her a knife and suggesting that she kill herself. Now here she admits that she has married, and he gets even more angry. And he says that you've lost your reputation and I don't want to see you again in the life and this and that. So now it is here that Antonio and the Duchess make a plan to flee, to run away. So this is how the things grow more serious, more somber. So they decide to leave that place. So the Duchess, who wishes to protect Antonio by removing him from Malfi, falsely claims that he has stolen from her and hence has him banished to Ancona. Now this is all she can think of, because she cannot keep him here and put him into any greater risk. So once Antonio has left, Bassola defends his virtue to the Duchess so emphatically that she admits the secret of their marriage. Now here Bassola is being a shrewd villain. He kind of praises Antonio so that he can win the heart of the Duchess, and she admits everything to him, and she does tell him the secret of her story. Bassola pretends to support her, and she sends him after Antonio with money and news that she will soon follow him. And in Ancona, where Antonio has been sent a few days later, the Cardinal catches up to him and banishes the Duchess and her family from there. So they are not allowed to live peacefully anywhere. They reach Ancona also, and there they are banished. On their way out of town, Bassola brings her an ostensibly forgiving but threatening letter from Ferdinand, and so the Duchess, fearing the ambush, tells Antonio to separate from her with their oldest son. Now, this is the time when they decide to separate because they actually cannot risk their lives. So he flees with his eldest son to Milan. Immediately after their part, Bassola and a group of soldiers take the Duchess and her 2 remaining children captive and bring them back to her palace. So we see that they are captivated, they are taken captives under the orders from the 2 brothers, Ferdinand and Cardinal, and they are taken back to the palace. Now the brothers imprison the Duchess in her own Amalfi palace. Now there, because Ferdinand has sworn never to see the Duchess, he confronts her in complete dark. He doesn't want to have a look at her in the light. He gives her his hand to hold, but then he reveals that it is the hand of a dead man, in order to convince her that Antonio is dead. So they start playing tricks on her to convince the Duchess that you are wrong. We've killed your husband, we've killed your children. So she is kind of tortured mentally with wax corpses of her body to convince her that they have died. So it is very painful for her to bear that torture when she's given the wax statues of her children and husband to show that they are dead. Executioners follow with a cord to strangle her. So they kind of strangle her neck But the Duchess remains calm, steadfast, calm, and courageous, at peace with the idea of rejoining her family, who she still believes are dead, and they strangle her. So it is very, very painful, very torturing, very tragic that Ferdinand has no pity for the children, no pity for his sister. She remains unafraid, she maintains her composures, but the executioners enter, they strangle her two children, they also kill Cariola along with her. Though Ferdinand has no pity for the children, but he begins to feel some remorse when she sees the Duchess's dead body. So we see how this Duchess is mercilessly killed by the orders of her brothers. Now, on looking at her dead body, Ferdinand becomes maddened with guilt. And Basola also feels and acknowledges a feeling of guilty conscience. Ferdinand then starts condemning Basola for following his orders and refuses to pay him for his work. Now, after Ferdinand has departed, he has left, the Duchess wakes up, but only long enough for Basola to tell her that her husband is still alive. She dies for real almost immediately after waking up. So ultimately, she dies. She cannot survive because she's been tortured and strangled to death. Now then in Act 5, Antonio, ignorant of his wife and children's deaths, plans to beg the cardinal that night for a reconciliation, for mercy, for friendship. Ferdinand has now completely lost his mind. He's gone mad. He's afflicted with lycanthropia, or a belief that he's a wolf. So he starts feeling very abnormal, as if he's an animal. Basola arrives and the cardinal pretends. He shows that he has no idea about the Duchess's death. He offers a great reward to Basola for the murder of Antonio. An offer Basola accepts, even though he's angry and he is planning a revenge against these two brothers now. Julia, the cardinal's mistress, approaches Basola declaring her love for him, and Basola uses her to get the cardinal to admit his involvement in the Duchess's murder. Now, Cardinal kills Julia. So Basola shows that he has overheard the secret and demands his reward, killing the Duchess. Now, the Cardinal tells his courtiers to stay away, no matter what they hear from him or Ferdinand, ostensibly because Ferdinand's madness gets worse when people are around, but actually because he wants privacy with which to dispose of Julia's body. Now, because he has killed Julia, so he says, everybody, no matter what kind of noises you hear, don't come out. And Basola, when he's waiting outside the cardinal room, accidentally kills Antonio, who has come to see the cardinal. Then he goes into cardinal's room and attacks him also. Now, because of the cardinal's warning that nobody should hear any noise and come out of the rooms, the courtiers ignore his cries for help. Ferdinand joins that scene, that mad scene, and stabs both Cardinal and Basola. Basola kills Ferdinand. So this is a hodgepodge scene in which they are killing each other. Nobody is coming for the help of these two brothers because they had already warned that nobody should come, no matter how much the noise. So Ferdinand kills both Cardinal and Basola, and before dying, Basola also kills Ferdinand. Now the courtiers, when they enter finally to see, they see that Cardinal and Basola have died, but not before the latter has confessed the particulars of the situation. Delio enters with Antonio and Duchess's oldest son, who is the only survivor of the family. Now Delio and the courtiers promise to raise this boy, the eldest son of the Duchess, as a legacy to his parents, which gives the play a final glimmer of hope. So this is how we see that all the main characters of the play die. Basola, who has been a villain throughout the play, although in the end he realizes he is guilty and he kills both the villain brothers and then he dies himself. Both the brothers die in that chaos of killing. Basola stabs Ferdinand also, and Cardinal also dies, and then there is a final speech in which they realize how wrong they were. Now, after all these deaths, we see Antonio and his son with Delio. They announce their intention to help the son grow up, receive his proper inheritance, and the play ends here. So, this was the famous revenge tragedy of Webster, the Duchess of Malfi. Stay tuned for the next videos. Thank you for now.